What's up? Today I'm going to jump right in. Why part of you knows better, but you still do the same thing, still think the same thoughts, still react. So I'm going to explain a little bit about inner child and parts work. Last week I talked about some of the exercises I use in sessions. So one thing I noticed, not just even within myself, but with others, is if I know better, then why do I keep doing the same thing? If I know I don't want to yell at my kids, then why do I yell at them? If I know I don't want to be irritated within my family, right, in the home, then why am I always irritated? Tons more examples and what people ask themselves, what people ask me. And there's answers to what's happening. It's a lot deeper than we realize. And I think that's what's hard, is so many of us are so used to trying to wrap our head around something, try to understand something. And with this work, you're just not going to be able to wrap your head around it. So I know I shouldn't criticize myself, right? And then something happens in your life and here you are criticizing yourself. What's the matter with you? How could I do that? How did I forget to send that? I know I should set boundaries, but why every chance I have to set a boundary, something just holds me back from doing it. I know I shouldn't abuse alcohol and drink as much, but I don't know. It's just like my friends are out. I just want to unwind. And then one glass or one beer or one drink leads to the next. And so these are many of the thoughts that we tend to carry and walk around with. Especially when it comes to healing, and it's like, do I really have to ask this guy for help? Do I have to reach out to talk to somebody? Like, I'm an adult just like he is, just like the therapist is. I have more kids than they do. I've been married a longer time than he is. I'm older than he is. So how can he help me? I should know what to do, right? Almost like I should know the answers in some way. But that's why people hire me. You're not gonna be able to do this. Can't do it on your own. This took years and years and years for me to understand and have some breakthroughs with this and become more aware and understand. I mean, think about it. If you go out to dinner with your friends and someone's like, hey, I've been doing a lot of inner child work lately. Right? How many around the table are like, oh, I love it. Do it every weekend. Can't wait. It's great. Nobody's going to really understand what you're saying. If you say, yeah, I've been getting in touch with my inner parts lately, as I don't believe that I am just a person with just a single mind, that there's a lot more going on to me under the surface than I know. I mean, people might even judge it, right? They might even think you're a little off. Maybe worry about you. I don't know. He says he's talking to his inner parts. Like, he's talking to his angry part. I don't know what he's doing. Oh, man. Hope he's all right. So, it's you're going to need somebody, right? You're going to need a guide, a healer, a teacher, a counselor, whatever it is you want to call it. So what do I mean when I even talk about parts? Again, I'm not talking about multiple personalities. I'm not talking about having a disorder here. I'm talking about the different ways that we learned to survive life. Now, that's a pretty big statement, right? It's a powerful sentence there. I'm talking about the different ways that we learn to survive life. Like, some of us can even go into how hard our life was, how poor we were, all the hardships we've endured, and all the setbacks our family had, and we talk all about it. But the moment I talk about their relationship with their parents, that's a big one. You know, how the relationship, you know, what they witnessed between the parents and, you know, grandparents as well. They're involved in what we pass down generationally. And then if you had people that you lived with for long periods of time when you were, and by childhood, I mean, you know, from when you were born to 18. Think about that, right? That's 18 years that you depended on your parents for survival, really, right? All those needs I've talked about in previous lives, the physical, intellectual, emotional, relational, spiritual needs. There's a bunch there. And when you're an infant, you figure out your own way of trying to get your needs met, right? Maybe you cry. As a toddler, same kind of deal. Cry, meltdown, temper tantrums. So, how did our parents show up in those moments? And, you know, this is the challenging, right? It's like, my parents were good, and I've shared this before, so I don't want to get too wrapped up into it, but I've heard it all, right? I don't want to be disrespectful to my parents, or I don't want to be disloyal to my family. You know, you don't talk about family secrets. That's not what you do. Now, I'm not saying you go into an Acme supermarket and start talking about this stuff, but if you do want to change your marriage around, show up differently, at least for yourself, and as a parent, for your child or for your children, then we have to take a look at this. How much mental illness was in your family? How much emotional unwellness was there? And I have a list of 20, 25 things that I go over with the people I work with that can shine a light on that. So yeah, there is some survival there. Again, infant, toddler, preschool, you know, can't go out and work and pay rent and put food on the table for yourself. No, you're solely relying on these adults in your life. And a lot of times, those adults are not healthy. They're not doing this work. They're not doing other forms of healing. They aren't taking care of themselves physically, mentally. So none of us entered this world knowing how to protect ourselves, especially emotionally. As children, our brains and our nervous systems are always asking the same thing, like, what do I need to stay safe? How do I get this need met by my father, by my mother? Am I safe physically, safe emotionally, safe relationally? Children can't leave unhealthy environments. They're stuck. They can't do anything. A 3-year-old can't look at his father and say, you know what, dude? You got a bad attitude. You got a lot of anger, man. You got to cool it with me. I'm only 3. Back it up a little bit. Chill out. 3-year-old can't do that. Can't fight back. 3-year-old can't be like, you know what, Ma? I see all the pills that you're taking. I see the drinking that you're doing. I hear you bashing Dad all the time. I'm out. Pack my bag. I'm moving out. Right? Can't do that. Again, we're just solely dependent on these people. As unhealthy as some of these parents are. Can't choose different parents. Can't move out. So instead of changing the environment, because there may be a lot to change, children adapt. And that's where many of our protective parts begin. I don't believe that we were born angry. I don't believe that we were born to be people pleasers, right? Nice all the time. By the way, I don't want to get too off track with that one, but oh man, is that one really something I deal with? Not just with myself, but others. Just the being nice, man. I'll put it up there with almost addiction. It's kind of a bold statement, I get it. But it's just so bad. It's just not healthy. It's not a healthy way to show up in life. Just being nice. Being a perfectionist. We weren't born to be an overachiever, to make sure that we, accomplished everything in sight. Now, I do believe that we were born with a lot of healthy qualities. I mean, if you think about your own children, or maybe even think about yourself, if you can go that far back. If you don't have kids, or you don't care, think about yourself, maybe you have some nieces and nephews, but think about how curious they are as kids. That's healthy. Think about how playful they are. And creative and joyful, right? You hear that say, kids are just a joy to be around. And kids they're so open and trusting. They're authentic. They're as real as it gets. Little kids. As real as it gets. Right? Like, kid will just start laughing out of nowhere. Just having a great time. Not worried about if anybody's judging them. Oh, what's he laughing at? Is he okay over there? They have no problem crying. None. They're trying not, they don't have anything to cry about. All good over here. Nothing to see here. I'm tough. I'm good. I'm okay. Kids cry. They're okay with being hurt. and crying to share with their adults in their lives what's going on with them. They are absolutely connected to their core selves. Again, the issue is life happens. Parents show up the way they show up. And maybe you have a parent, or maybe you were parented where maybe you're doing this now as a parent, where you criticize, constantly criticizing. Kid can't do enough. Kid can't accomplish enough. It's just always more to get done, more to do, more to accomplish. Trying to avoid that criticism. Maybe you've dealt with rejection as a parent, that kids pick up on that energy where, they go, "Mom, can I ask you something?" Well, what do you want? Can't see I'm doing 100 things over here? Now, I know this sounds rough because I'm always talking about this. And it almost sounds like, geez, you're being real hard on parents. But I'm a firm believer that a lot of what goes on with this does come from our parents, the relationship we had with siblings. How we were taught as kids growing up. So, kids pick up on that sense of rejection. Now, again, if a mom or dad's having a rough day or something like that, then I'm a parent. I'm not a guru with this stuff by any means. I'm far from even where I want to be as a dad. But I'm aware now that when I show up a certain way, I'm like, oh man, I could be developing a rejection wound right here. That's something that floats through my mind now. Maybe kids are ignored. Maybe you were ignored as a kid. Out of sight, out of mind. You could be at a family party and like no adults even knew you were around. You could do whatever you want. You're running all over the house. Right? As long as you didn't bother the parents, interrupt their good time, then all good. But what I also mean is, maybe when you were crying, maybe when you were looking for somebody, they still didn't take the time to meet you where you were at, to understand why you were hurt, what happened. And so you feel ignored. Now, again, that's painful because these are people that we're putting our lives into their hands. These are people that we are trusting wholeheartedly. So all of these wounds are exactly why they're wounds. They're painful. Maybe you grew up around a lot of alcohol abuse or addiction or some other compulsion or obsession. That goes a long way into a child's mental health as they get older. Maybe there was emotional neglect. Now, I talked about a lot of our emotional needs and all through those developmental years. And if they were neglected, parents didn't really know about those needs, a good chance you didn't have those needs met, and you developed ways to get those needs met. Usually, they're unhealthy ways, maladaptive ways. Maybe you were bullied. And, we talk a lot about bullying. But, sometimes the bully is at home. And I really don't think that we shine a light on that as much as we should. Some of the most irritated, annoyed, aggressive, angry people are the parent, the people in our house. They have all these lectures and meetings on bullying and school, and we have all the resources and being on the bus. And I really think we're just missing it. For the first bully of a child's life could be a parent. Again, harsh, I understand, but I don't exempt myself from this at all. In fact, I had to accept this about myself. This is why when I talk about feelings and emotions and inner child and parts work, I know it's legit. It's as legit as it gets in terms of courage and being brave, stepping into something that feels completely uncomfortable, that there's a ton of fear in. Right? Who wants to look at that? Right? I want to be the father that says, I jump in front of a bullet for my son. Right? You know what I would do for my kid? Right? Oh, God forbid somebody in the neighborhood or somebody at school messes with my son. God forbid. I'm with it. I'm with all that. I laugh now because honestly, it's a little ridiculous at how I look at myself and how I showed up. Not even realizing that I'm one of the perpetrators of my son's development over the years. I don't know. Let's. I actually was taught this, and it's something that's just magnificent because it really helped me. But am I gonna have to take a bullet for my son? Am I gonna have to go around to my neighborhood and start knocking on dad's doors and tell him to come outside in the yard, show my son what a real man is like, how to handle business? How many times am I gonna have to do that? Or how many times is my son going to need me to emotionally regulate before I blow my lid? How many times is my son going to cry and need something and me be aware enough to be like, all right, where are we at? What do we need here? How often am I going to be or have the chance to be the calm in his storm? To be grounded every day. Every day I could show up emotionally for my family. Every day. As healthy as I can. But, it just sounds a lot tougher and a lot cooler when, you're talking about, how you're going to stick up for your kids. Don't mess with me. Don't mess with my kid. It's like, maybe you're messing with your own kid. That's an acceptance that's really, really difficult. That's not an easy one. But I've accepted it. I continue to accept that in some of the ways I show up is not for the best for him. But I also know that there's a lot of hope and there's a lot of work to do, which gives me a lot of power. I feel a lot more sense of, hey, I can do something about this. So the goal is to stay as consistent as possible with parenting. Maybe as a kid you can reflect on what was mom's moods like. Most often than not, what about dad's moods? Again, children are not logical. They're not, mom's overwhelmed. That's mom's works full time and then she takes care of things around the house. She's overwhelmed, of course. Right? Kids aren't taking a step back going, you know what, my dad's doing a great job. He had a harder childhood than I did. Kids don't do that. Children personalize all these experiences that they're going through. Right? Their question to themselves is not about what mom and dad went through. It's more about, what does this mean about me? Right? The way mom is living, the way dad is showing up. So children begin making meaning out of their painful experiences. And they start forming beliefs behind them too. It's my fault. It's a big one for a kid. And even adults know this. They can go back to this. My needs are not important. I can't trust people. People always abandon you. People never stick around. I have to earn love. I have to earn approval in order to be okay with myself. I have to take care of everyone. I mean, look at my family. I'm seeing that there's a lot going on here. I have to step up. I got to be the caretaker here. Those beliefs are not coming from left field. They're often a child's best explanation for hurtful or painful experiences that not only did they experience it, but then they were left with the residual feelings or emotions or whatever it is, thoughts, that they didn't get a chance to experience, fully work through. And those beliefs then begin shaping how we think, how we feel, how we behave, and eventually how we relate to other people. So I want to discuss a little bit about fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Now, our nervous system really is pretty remarkable. When it senses danger, it responds automatically, trying to keep itself safe, self-protection. You may have heard of survival, like fight, flight, but there's also freeze and there's also fawning as well. These are our survival responses. Now, you can have a healthy fight response, and that's why it's like, oh man, I have all this anger. I'm just trying to, I don't know why I get so angry. I'm just trying to get rid of it. It's like, you know what? Maybe you should get angry, right? Maybe it's okay to get angry, right? Maybe your spouse is hurting you. Maybe they keep crossing a boundary with you, and you're getting good and frustrated about it. That's okay. You're allowed to get angry. The thing is, with survival, we're picking up on a threat somehow, some way. But when you go through a childhood where there could be a lot of traumatic experiences, where a kid's developing complex trauma and becomes an older adult, that's where we go into fight mode or flight mode without a threat. Nobody's threatening us. It's just our nervous system's reaction. Because at one time, fighting maybe helped you get through. Being defensive is fight mode. Being critical, being controlling, that's all fight response. Flight is staying busy. Right? Staying busy really helps us just avoid looking at ourselves and anything that could be under the layers. You may become the person that never stops being busy because of so much that you have going on. So you're just always working, or always cleaning, always organizing, even helping. Always distracted. Just slowing down for you just feels so uncomfortable. Freeze, maybe nothing you did change the situation. So your nervous system started to shut down. You go numb. You disconnect. This is the kid that grows up to be an adult with a lot of self-doubt, really hard time at making decisions for themselves. Often your nervous system is doing exactly what it learned to do many years ago. Fawning is another one. This is one that's incredibly common, which is why I enjoyed learning about it and adding in here. Is your nervous system learns, if I keep everyone happy, right, if I don't rock the boat, if I don't upset everyone or anyone, if I become who people need me to be, right, just fit in, that chameleon, then I'm good. I'm all right. I can get through. I can survive. I can stay safe. People pleasing often begins as protection, and protective parts develop. So every survival response that you have often develops as a protector. The people pleaser. Imagine you were 7 years old. Dad comes home from work. You don't know which version of dad you're going to get. You have no idea the version of dad that's walking through the door. Some nights he's super dad. It's great. Other nights, he's yelling at you. He's mean. He's yelling at mom. He's angry. I mean, some nights he walks, before he even takes his shoes off, maybe he's yelling. Before he even gets in through the door completely, he's upset and ticked off. So your nervous system starts paying attention. Maybe if I don't say anything, I'm okay. Maybe if I'm quiet tonight, maybe if I clean my room, maybe if I don't ask for anything. So the child, believe it or not, right, this is a sense of manipulation. They're trying to manipulate dad to treat them a certain way, and they're going to do it by people pleasing or fawning. The child is adapting in the best way it knows how. Years later, that same child grows up and I don't know why. I'm struggling in relationships, in my marriage. I don't know why I have such a hard time saying no. I can't even hear the word no. I feel guilty. I feel terrible. Like, if I don't give my kid everything. If my kid gets upset with me, I just feel so bad about it. Like, so bad enough where I'm not going to do what's best for them. I'm just going to give in. Because at the end of the day, children do need consequences and discipline and boundaries. But sometimes because of our own guilt, or we won't follow through. Now, this way of living, you might think, oh, it started at 30, 35 years old, when I got engaged, when we married. And it's easy to really just hone in on the spouse, but it started because pleasing helped create emotional safety back in a time when your system really needed it. And it goes long before your spouse. That's something else that's hard to... Again, been there, totally understand. Imagine an 8-year-old who gets picked on every day. Nobody notices, nobody checks in, nobody even helps the boy out. Eventually he decides no one is ever making me feel that weak again. So he becomes tough. He yells first before anybody else, right? He starts making fun of himself to show that whatever you are going to say, it's not going to faze me. He pushes people away before they can push him away. He gets angry before anybody can hurt him. Years later, everyone says, man, he's a decent guy, but he's a lot of anger issues. we look at it as maybe there's an angry protective part there that's been standing guard for 30, 40 years. Imagine a little girl who mostly receives praise when she performs well. Straight A's, winning, being helpful, being perfect. She slowly begins believing, like, when I perform, I matter. She grows into an adult who's exhausted from performing all the time. Nothing is ever good enough. She reaches one goal and immediately, right, the finish line, whether it's done by her, because that's the way she's been trained, or by somebody else, gets moved back. The perfectionist is not trying to torture themselves. The perfectionist part in your system is trying to earn love. Maybe conflict in your home meant a lot of slamming doors and yelling and screaming and verbal abuse. Maybe it even meant silent treatment. Nobody talked to each other. People were just upset. As a child, you learn, stay out of the way. Adults are serious, and things can take a turn fast and can get ugly and scary. So now your spouse says, why won't you just open up and talk to me? I don't get it. Again, it's not because you love them less. It's not because you don't care. It's because you have a protective part that still believes that conflict equals danger. There's a threat there. This is why it's so challenging for spouses as well involved in this, because you could take it one whole way. Who's having an issue with their spouse thinking, yeah, they grew up in a lot of verbal abuse and a lot of conflict that was unresolved, and it got really heated and scary. And so that's why they have a hard time sharing what's going on with them. This is why you got to learn it. One of the ways I help clients make sense of themselves, pretty much I use like a simple sequence that helps them out once they start seeing it. So anyway, you take your life events and you see what beliefs formed out of those life events, and then what protective parts came up to protect when those beliefs were formed. And those protective parts, living in your system as they do, leads to thoughts. And those thoughts that we carry, that we have, lead to feelings. And those feelings produce behaviors out of us. And those behaviors shape our relationships. I mean, it's amazing when we sit down together and break that sequence down. But anyway, I'll try to do it here. A little example. Imagine a little boy whose parents constantly argued. Every time voices got louder, he ran to his room, closed the door. No one explained to this little boy what was happening or reassured him that he was safe. So the life event is frequent conflict and unpredictability in his home. So what belief comes out of that life event? He begins to believe that conflict is never safe, which, if anybody's listening out there, conflict happens in marriages, in relationships. It's like necessary. Now, I don't mean World War III and gloves are off and you're saying and doing things that you can't take back that are just so hurtful. I'm not talking about that, but so when you got a man and a woman, we're going to disagree, right? How we pay bills, how we save money, vacation trips, kids, how are we going to raise them, school, sports, dance, whatever. conflict is inevitable. But again, going back to my example, the belief is conflict is not safe. So the feelings that I have don't matter. I need to stay out of the way. Those are his beliefs. To survive with that belief that he needs to stay out of the way, we'll call it an avoider part shows up. That avoider part is the part that stays in the room, stays quiet, minds his own business all the time, doesn't speak up, avoid conflict at all costs. As an adult, his thoughts become, if I say something in this moment right now, I don't know what's going to happen. This can go bad, right? This can get worse. I should just keep the peace. So by stuffing all of this sequence, right? We're just not being ourselves. That leads to having a lot of anxiety and fear. His behaviors are shutting down, avoiding those sensitive, difficult conversations. Then his relationship, because of the way he's showing up, because he's constantly living in this protective mode with all these protector parts, begins to suffer. The relationship begins to suffer because the people who love him experience him as distant, emotionally unavailable. When we only look at the behavior, we miss the story underneath. And healing, you would think, right? Oh, we got to get rid of that avoider part. We got to get rid of that perfectionist part. That's what most of us have been trying to do. We have these ways about ourselves that we don't like. And so we try to numb, we try to avoid, we try to push down. Inner child and parts work is actually embracing these parts of us for getting us through a time when we didn't have the capacity or the tools or the support that we needed to be able to get through. So, pretty big misunderstanding with the parts. Yeah, I have a lot of anger. Let's get rid of all of it. So the goal is never to get rid of the parts. Most of the parts, hopefully you've learned now, are helping you actually, or have helped you at some point to survive, to get through, to make the best out of something. Without these parts, you may not have made it through very difficult seasons in your life. So the goal is helping those parts realize that you're not 7 anymore. That you're not trapped anymore. You're not helpless. That you're not powerless anymore. Your healthiest adult self can now lead. So the people pleaser says, oh, you have to say yes, right? You can't say no. Your adult self says, I understand why you're afraid. I understand why you want to say yes. But we are allowed to set boundaries. We're allowed to say no. The angry protector part says, you got to attack first, man. You don't wait. You attack first. Your adult self says, I know that you're trying to protect me. That's why you want to attack first, but it's okay. I got this. The scared child says, don't leave the house. Your adult self says, I know that you're afraid. I'm with you. Right? As your adult self. Now, as your adult self, as you've been working through this, right, then we have to show up these ways. That's how we build trust with our protector parts. Healing is about building trust with ourselves and with our parts. So I'd like to give you a small taste of what parts work can feel like. So if you're comfortable, take a minute, get comfortable. Close your eyes. Just take a couple of slow, deep breaths in through the nose. Slow exhale out through the mouth. Now imagine you're walking into a quiet room. In the center of the room is a round table. Sitting around that table are different parts of you. They look different heights, right? Different ages. Maybe you're a people pleaser, Mr. Nice Guy, Mr. Sweet Woman, or Mrs. Sweet. Sitting around the table, maybe your angry protector part is at the table. Maybe your perfectionist part or overachiever part at the table. Maybe that avoider part we talked about before is sitting at the table. Maybe a younger version of you who still carries a lot of fear, a lot of sadness. What I want you to do now, as you're visualizing this, is don't judge them. Don't argue with them. Don't look down on them. I want you to just look around the table one at a time and just notice who's there. Now imagine your healthiest adult self walks into the room and sits at the head of the table. No yelling, no shaming, no criticism. Just interested, curious. Look at one of the parts and gently ask, what are you trying to protect me from? And I gave you a couple of examples before. See what they say. Then you could ask a part, what do you need from me, your adult self, today? And sit with whatever comes up. There's no right or wrong answers in any of this. Whether it's a word, an image, a feeling, or simply silence. The goal is not to force an answer. You don't have to pretend for me or try to fool yourself that you're doing the exercise. It's okay. The goal is just to start a practice where we begin listening. Believe it or not, the more you practice this, it sounds cuckoo and you might have already shut it down, but the more you tap in to these parts inside of you, maybe you can visualize these parts, because I like to do that as well, sitting around the table. I have a 14-year-old self here with a book bag on, right? Then you might have a 14-year-old part of you with a bathing suit on, right? So one is a 14-year-old at school, the other is a 14-year-old part from a pool, from the beach, from vacation. You could also have at the table a 7-year-old part. That feels scared. So, believe it or not, these parts, when we give them space enough, will start shining a light, answering back. When you're ready, just take another slow, deep breath and open your eyes. So, cool exercise. That's another one that I throw into the mix. The more you practice it too, the more rewarding it becomes, that practice. In the beginning, when I first tried it, it's almost like I don't even know what's happening. What are we doing? A lot of judgment. This is weird. Why am I doing this? Even judging some of the parts of myself. Not liking some parts of myself. And then you really start to become more curious as the years go on. That practice is there. So the behaviors you struggle with may not be evidence of, how messed up you are. They may be evidence that at some point in your life, your mind and nervous system found creative ways to help you get through, to help you get by. And those strategies may no longer serve you now, but they deserve to be understood before we can change. So healing is not about becoming someone completely different. It's not about, getting all these parts to beat it. It's about reconnecting. So you're actually going to connect as the adult self with those parts of you at that round table. You're going to ask that 7-year-old, why you look so upset? Why are you crying? What's happening? Allow that 7-year-old to answer you back. Anyway, that's it. Pretty much coming up on an hour. So I will be preparing again. I had the 7 weeks worth of lives to go through. More about like healing, actually how to heal and change and all that good stuff that we want. So last week was week 1. This is week 2. And next week I'll be jumping on. Keep it going.